Hi and welcome back to
Inspired to Game. I'm Sean.
And I am Lola. Today we are talking about Harrow County, a game of Gothic conflict by Off the Page Games, who we want to thank for sending us this copy to review. This is a 1 versus 1 asymmetrical game for 1 to 3 players, or up to 4 with the Firefl expansion. Now, we will give you a very quick overview of how it plays before we get into our review. Harrow County begins as a 2-player game where you can play one of 3 factions. The Protectors, trying to rescue townsfolk by creating paths from them to your home base, or as a family, creating pathways of storms from their home base to the buildings of Harrow County to destroy them. Or as Cammy, trying to find a doll that has her life essence so she can rule Harrow County. You can play the game solo or 3-player with the inclusion of Hester, the revived witch who will try to infest and devour the other legends in order to rise in power. The Firefl expansion adds an additional faction, the Firefl, who will be searching for their queen along with her crown and sword. This allows for a 3-player game with the Firefl instead of Hester, or you can turn it into a 4-player game by using both of them. The game is comprised of 4 phases over an indeterminate amount of rounds. Phase 1 involves placing a building, if the family is playing, or placing 1 townsfolk if the Protectors are playing. In Phase 2, players will alternately activate their mason jars, performing their actions. The abilities mason jar allows you to strengthen, advance, or spawn new haints. The Wild Mason Jar allows you to perform those same actions as many times as you have wild tokens. The Legend Mason Jar allows you to activate your legend powers. The Attack Mason Jar allows you to attack a fellow haint or legend by activating the tree. In Phase 3, you'll check to see if any player is on the central brambles location. If they are, they will score 1 point. Then you'll check to see if the end game has been triggered this round. The end game is triggered when any player has gained 7 points, or if you're playing with the Firefl expansion, they have found their queen. If the end game hasn't been triggered, you will reset mason jars and bonus tiles. Points are scored throughout the game by buildings being destroyed by the family, or by townsfolk making it safely home with the Protectors, or Cammy finding her life essence in the doll token, as well as haint clashes and attacks too. And in a nutshell, that is how you play Harrow County, a game of Gothic conflict. Now, I want to start out here that I absolutely love this game. It is innovative and exciting to play. Now, before we go further into the review, we must let you know that if you have this game, or if you're picking it up, you need to disregard the rulebook. Now, this is because it's been completely revamped. There is a PDF. You can get that PDF to read it. You can print it out if you want. We'll have a link in the description below. Now, the original rulebook, it organizes the game in a series of chapters that you play through as a way to ease into the game. You play chapter 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Now, the new one simply has a training game followed by the full game. So you can optionally play the training game to ease your way into it, or you can just jump into the full game and it's all there. The rulebook is really easy to understand, and we highly recommend going with this new revamped rulebook. Now, for our review, we did start with a training game so we can have an idea of how that plays, and we did find it really useful. It is a wonderful place to start because this isn't a complicated game, but there is so much going on in the strategies and tactics of it that it was really helpful to start with a more basic rendition of it and then add on more components later on. Now, I really enjoy an asymmetrical game. They can be a ton of fun to play. Now, if you're not familiar, within this type of game, each player will play a different faction or character, whichever, which plays differently with different rules and oftentimes different objectives than everybody else, which makes it very interesting. And as an asymmetrical game, I find all the factions here, and even within a faction, to be very well balanced.
Yeah, for example, one of them is a bag builder. Everybody has cards that are different for each faction as to what powers they give you and what the focus of those powers are. And then within the factions, you've got different characters to choose from.
And both the protectors and the family have a route building element too. And the fair folk have a deduction element. Cammy has a touch of hidden movement and a bit of pickup and potentially deliver. So everything plays quite differently between all the different factions, and all of this makes it very highly replayable.
There's two different sides of the board. There's all the different factions. Within the factions, you have different characters. And then after you've chosen your faction, there is the basic powers that you're using for that game. There are two sides to that tile, so you have two sets of basic powers to use. A whole lot of different choices, a whole lot of variability.
Now, at the 2-player count, this game is exceptional. It really, really shines at that player count.
2 players, you only have one other opponent whose objective you are trying to thwart. When you add more players, it gets a little more complex because there is really no way for your opponents to gang up on you. Everybody's fighting for themselves. Everybody wants to make that move that is going to put them ahead and mess up everybody else's objectives. You can't really form an alliance with anybody.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point. And what's really neat about this game, I love that everybody has a completely different goal, and their game is completely different, but at the same time, in order to win yours, you're trying to thwart theirs. So you have Cammy looking for the doll, you have Hester trying to infest Haints and then devour you, you have the protectors that are trying to get townsfolk home, you have the family that's trying to build storms to destroy buildings. Every aspect is different and plays differently, which makes it so dynamic to me. So we did play it at 3 players so that we could play the Fairfolk expansion. So the Fairfolk expansion offers that alternative to the 3-player game, and then can potentially expand it to 4 players as well, which is really cool. Now, I love the Fairfolk expansion. It is beautiful. Everything is a shiny, reflective silver material that gives it this ethereal, magical air. And I love the way that it plays. So it adds a bit of deduction to the play. So with playing the Fairfolk with 2 other people working on their objectives, I love how it's a little bit different. So they're working on their things. You're not actually a presence there. You're just trying to deduce where things are, and you put offerings out on the board. Offerings which give everybody else potentially an extra action for their turn, but then it gives you a chance to do some more deduction to try to figure out where your things are. It is a lot of fun to play.
And it makes it really tough as playing against the Fairfolk to I need to do something to prevent them from making those guesses and nailing down where the elements are that they want to collect. But at the same time, that's a really tempting extra action that they're offering over there, so I kind of really want to go and pick that up.
Yeah, and this gets into the balance of it though too. So if they take one of my offerings, which can potentially lead me to get some more information, it doesn't necessarily, because it all comes down to the tree. So that's where the Fairfolk is involved with the tree. So if we activate the tree and more of the Fairfolks come out, well, then they get to get some more information. But if theirs doesn't, then they don't. So then it all comes down to the strategy of who's got more in the tree and what's falling down. So there's just a lot going on here, and I think the Fairfolk plays really, really well with the other factions.
Definitely.
So if you are playing with 3 people or want to bring it to 4, I highly do recommend getting the Fairfolk expansion, because even at 3-player, it is wonderful to get it. And you can even play at 2-player too. So you can play it at 2-player by playing Hester in the solo mode essentially, and then adding the Fairfolk with her. So that is a way to even play it with a 2-player game.
Now, we just mentioned the tree along with the Fairfolk. Now, the tree is part of the basic game. It is actually built into the box, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Now, it is a cube tree because your strength cubes for each faction are taken whenever you do a tree test and dropped into the top of the tree, and whatever comes out is your strength within the battle. But the tree is designed not like a dice tower where you need your dice to come out. It's actually designed to hang your cubes up in the tree so that you might put 5 cubes in and only 2 come out. well, try and remember that, because those extra 3 cubes could come out the next time you do a battle and add to your strength.
It's really exciting because, yeah, you never know what's going to come out. And even if you didn't have some good luck and you had something stay up in the tree, well, it might get knocked down next time. So there's always that little not knowing aspect of excitement that you get to when you get to activate the tree. That makes it so much fun. Now, the tree has symbology within the game as well. So we haven't got too much into the lore of the game. Now, this is based off of a comic book, and the gist of the story is there was this witch, Hester, that was driven out of town and killed and buried underneath this tree. Now, a baby came from this tree, and she was raised in the village. She is Emmy, who is one of the protectors that's trying to help the townsfolk. Now, Cammy is apparently her sister that was whisked off to New York and has come back and is trying to rule Harrow County. But the interesting thing here is that the tree has roots in the game. It's a very pivotal part of it, so it's highly thematic. The tree is part of it. So throughout the game, the theme is really, really strong. And I think it's a perfect game for this Halloween month and season. And in fact, I've had so much fun with this game that I know this is going to be one of those things that we bring out every October to play again and again, because it's so much fun and it just kind of has a great October vibe to it.
For sure.
So each of the factions, everything that you're doing, the theme really plays out and you really get a sense for that. The haints all look really cool, and there's different sculpts between the different factions, and they all have a little hole on them. And there's little snakes that you can put into the little hole. So if you're playing Hester and they infest haints so that she can now control them too, they just look really cute. It's kind of a neat attention to detail to mark that they are infested. It's great to note that there is a high level of player interaction here. So a lot of people really love player interaction in their games, and this is fraught with it. There's a ton of interaction going on various different levels that is stimulating, exciting, and fun.
Yeah, if you don't interact against your opponent, they're just going to waltz to victory.
Well, and it is interesting because with different play styles too, say for instance, you can have tons of battles, but you can actually play a game and even win without even having any battles. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you play the game based on your own play styles or your strategies for an individual game. So even our first game, we were so focused on our 2 objectives that we actually didn't fight a whole lot. I'm trying to get my townsfolk in, he's trying to get the buildings taken care of, and it kind of came down to who got them done first. So you can do lots of battles, you don't need to. There's just a lot of different ways to play around with it, which is really great. Now, my final thoughts for this game, I find it brilliant. I really love this game. It's innovative, it's fun, there's a ton of replayability as well as player interaction, and it's fantastic to play in this Halloween-y season.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of looking at it as it's almost like a video game in a way, because you can pick that faction and try and master all the elements of that faction. You can pick a specific character within that faction and just try and learn all the moves you can make with it, almost like a fighting game on the computer or in an arcade.
Well, thank you so much for watching our review today.
If you've enjoyed this video, please support the channel by subscribing.
And as always, happy gaming, folks. Cammy trying to fall... or as Cammy trying to fall... Hester will be trying to infect and devour the fellow players.
Yeah, smiling.
And devour. So it Now, before we get further into the review of the game, we need to make it clear
that you need to know, just to ease you into the game before you... Everything she just said. I just realized, I'm like, nope, that's just a reiteration of... Makes it really, very really, actually.
Very really, really, really. And if you want. Or I can.
No,
Now then, a baby appeared at this, or emerged from, or something like that. A baby was around this tree. No, not around. It wasn't really around. It came from the tree. Innovative. I want to get that word in.
And don't remember crazy cool. You gotta get
Crazy cool in. It's innovative and crazy cool.
Crazy cool.
I made a pun that I didn't even know.
You didn't notice?
No.
The tree has roots in the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's fucking hilarious. It's great.
One more point. Do you have any more?
I have no points.
You're pointless.
I am pointless.